the Evolution Security Podcast. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the EvoSec podcast. I am joined by my subordinate and second in command, twin brother, Aaron Davis. Man, Aaron, you got your Christmas shopping done?
No, I don't, but let's just address that first thing you said. I'm going to stage an insurrection, but with no weapons.
Like
how's
this,
that going to go for me?
Yeah, that's we'll see how January 6th insurrection plays out, I guess. But
well, kind of similar. I'll kind of like how they did. I'll do something like, run up and punch you and then run off. It's my tactic. Well, kidding aside, man, what's up? Good to be here with you, brother.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by a special guest for a third time, the man, the myth, Mr. Chuck Haggard of Agile Training and Consulting. Chuck, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for asking me on.
It's a pleasure, and just for the audience out there, we've had some shitty internet and technical issues, so we're kicking this off again. Well, Chuck, for our audience members out there, we're gonna point them to your previous shows, but just give us a summarized bio for audience members that don't know you.
Okay, I've got a little bit of a military background, mainly a police background. I've been 35 years of law enforcement is where I'm currently at and counting. Retired out of one job after 28 years, and I'm bad at retirement. So took another job, worked there for 6.5, where I was a police officer, firefighter, air crash rescue specialist. After I retired from the first job, opened up my training company, Agile Training and Consulting, do firearms tactics, reasonable use of force, expert witness work, security consulting, things like site security, that sort of thing, consulting on people, do quite a bit of training. I started that because most of my life I was involved in either a military or police training paradigm, some sort of agency thing. I am still a national trainer for National Law Enforcement Training Center out of Kansas City, which specializes in law enforcement, police use of force stuff. And what we do is that's all instructor level training. So we certify instructors so that they can go back to their departments and teach in an academy or in-service setting, that sort of thing. But when I got close to my first retirement, I got asked to, after I was teaching in the Range Master Tactical Conferences, after Tom Gibbons invited me to teach at those, I got asked by people outside of law enforcement to do training. So I started my company so that I could, have a means to do that. And I've been staying pretty busy lately, more busy outside the cop world than in it.
And how do you like that? You like that more on the outside of law enforcement right now? I mean, just a different season in your life. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? You like it better right now, or?
So I was just down in the Nashville area, Murfreesboro. I got hosted by my friends, Ock and Tiffany at
nice.
CSA. And then we were at Outpost Armory down there in Murfreesboro. And so everybody that was there, I did an OC instructor school, some street encounter tactics, and I did a combative pistol course. And everybody in all the classes was enthusiastic to be there, eager to learn, wanted, they're there because they wanted to be. So contrast that with my previous life. Maybe I'm in an academy setting and I have people, let's say we're doing firearms training. I have people that probably, a lot of them don't even want to be there. They're not gun people. They don't see where it's important. Or even worse, you got jaded cops that have been on the job for a long time and they don't they don't think they need any of that because they don't know what they don't know. One of the most soul sucking things you can deal with is like having to do an in-service class for day shift detectives on a large agency, and you have people that want to bitch about getting paid to shoot free ammo on a warm
No
spring
kidding.
day,
I don't get it.
things like that. So, in a law enforcement setting, in an agency setting, I had to force the training. You offer good training, people still don't want to participate in it. So you have to make them minimum go through the, do what they need to do to know what they need to know so that you can put them out on the street and they don't make buffoons of themselves in the agency. Whereas in the non-cop world, it isn't that way. Every once in a while you get that guy, but for the most part, people are very, they made an investment. They made an investment in themselves, money, ammo, time, time off work, travel, maybe away from family, things like that. So they take it pretty seriously and they're pretty enthusiastic about that. So I find it very rewarding to be doing the non-cop stuff.
Well, and our good friend Craig Douglas has talked about that many times about when he was a trainer in his departments, about how special it was to him to be around people that just wanted to be there for the training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a good time to bring up a class I took from you, Chuck. You, Cecil Burch, and Darryl Bolke, the non-permissive environment or NPE Counter Robbery Class.
Yeah.
I had to try and figure out when that was. I looked at my calendar. I couldn't find it, honestly, but it was a couple months ago. And I'll tell you, it was full of students that really wanted to be there.
Mm-hmm.
It was an excellent class. It was material that people really need to be exposed to. It's one of those types of classes that maybe doesn't draw the people that just want to shoot a bunch of rounds and work on metrics and stuff and work on a sub-second draw, etc. But it was just a highly valuable class. And, essentially, I'll just go into it real quick at a high level. We, of course, had Cecil Burch, who worked with us on what's known as managing unknown contacts and verbalization. That's, of course, when dealing with people on the street, either benign or dangerous person, figuring that out and dealing with those people. And Darryl Bolke worked with us on some of the firearms stuff. And what was fun about that is that since this was an NPE class, we actually, like for me, I ran my little Glock 42, and for one thing, had a blast running it. And just an aside, it didn't feel like I was running a little pistol with that thing. So
those are a shockingly capable small gun. I use the Glock 42 in my small guns class for demos, and quite frankly, it's almost like cheating. It recoils like a 22, has good wound ballistics. It's as accurate as any of the other Glocks. If you look at the down zero zone on an IDPA target, I can keep all my rounds inside of down zero out past 40 yards with that Glock 42.
Nice.
Oh wow.
It's a surprisingly capable small gun.
Cool. Yeah, I've got one, and my wife carries one. But I love that little pistol. Now, and then of course you came in and gave us some coursework on OC spray. Now you're quite well known for that, and again, one of these days I need to take an actual class from you on that. But what I really want to talk about is that, of course, that the three of you had your slices of the class, but then you guys also had the classroom sections were a lot of fun because we weren't just with one of you guys working on your three slices. We had all three of you guys in the same room and all you guys bouncing things off each other and just wisdom bombs one after the other. So I just kind of want to circle it back to, I'm sure a lot of our audience knows this, but what is NPE? What does that stand for? And if you could explain what that really means to our audience.
So a lot of people will think non-permissive environment, someplace where what we're not advocating is something like, trying to sneak a gun onto a plane. But let's say Cecil in his former life, when he was in the corporate world, it would be legal for him to run around with a gun, but that might be off-putting to clients. And when you have, 6 and 7 figure deals that you're dealing with, the last thing you want to do is, print or have somebody figure out you're armed, be offended by that. You lose, a 6-figure deal, let's say. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
I have friends that have been in academia, which, can be fairly, we'll call it left leaning for want of a better, it's not terminology I really agree with, but everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say it. So, I have a couple of friends that have been, that are, or have been university professors, and even though they could legally carry a gun on campus, if the job found out they were up to it, being basically blackballed, having negative, consequences that, some of the careers you get into, people think, oh, well, you just get another job. Well, if you get kind of blacklisted or blackballed in some career fields, you may be done in that career field for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen that happen in a larger, more public venue of, say, Hollywood stars. You have somebody that comes out for whatever political, and then they get blacklisted, and you don't see them in movies anymore, that sort of thing.
Yep.
Well, that sort of thing happens in a number of other employment fields as well. So even though you can legally do something, maybe you don't want to spook people, maybe you don't want to lose a deal, maybe you don't want to have negative employment consequences. So that would still be a non-permissive environment. Or maybe you have a venue that you want to go to, and the rules of, let's say it's an arena, and the rules of the arena are just their rules. Like if they catch you rolling dirty with a gun, you're going to be told you have to leave. So, now you're out. Concert tickets or sports tickets or whatever. But that most security is security theater, so you don't want to leave your self-defense or your safety in the hands of lowest common denominator security theater people, right? So maybe you're going to go ahead and risk getting booted out of the venue. So what do you want? How do you want to do that? None of us are advocating rolling dirty in the manner of you're going to break the law, you're going to go to prison, except not advocating that. But there's a difference between, I think, trying to sneak a gun onto an airplane and then rolling truly concealed, truly low profile. So when you go into a $1.2 million deal with clients, so you don't blow the whole thing. Right. So does that make sense?
Oh, certainly.
Then the other thing we talk about is the difference between truly concealed carry and covered carry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a whole lot of people in the concealed carry world are covered. They're covering their guns. So instead of a gun in a flap holster, it's a gun under a T-shirt. But in either way, it's not really concealed, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's covered.
Covered carry. Mm-hmm.
Whereas we talk about some of the tactical advantages of if you need a gun and having that gun be truly a surprise to your bad guy, and some of those sorts of things. So when we're talking about NPE counter robbery, and then we also talk about things like all three of us, particularly Darryl and I, have had some bad luck with airlines. Maybe you get stuck, like here this year, I got stuck 18 hours in the Atlanta airport. And then they lost my bag with my guns in it. So now I'm in Georgia, and all I have with me is a flashlight. Very, very bright flashlight, because you can carry that on the airplane. So I had to immediately, what I had done, because I had a little bit of time, I had to do some traveling to get where I was going in a rental car, sourced some OC, sourced a knife, and then maybe I go someplace I have a gun. Like I've traveled out of country. I've been to places like Belize or other countries where you can't really have a gun or source a gun unless you're going to be like a cartel guy or whatever. So we talk about ways that you can have defensive implements with you, whatever those may be, within the confines of the environment that you find yourself in. Maybe it's an impact weapon, maybe it's a OC or some other defensive spray, maybe it's an edge weapon, whatever the case may be. Then how do you source these things? How do you use these things? How do you hide these things? And then, do the best that you can in the environment you find yourself in.
Well, a couple of things that spring to mind, that especially when it comes to sourcing weapons at whatever location you've found yourself in. I want to digress real quick when it comes to and then I'll get right back to that. I did want to just say this. So back to your issue of concealed carry versus, actually concealed carry. Darryl gave the 3 different levels: concealed carry, covered carry, concealed carry, and undetectable. And I found that nice to be able to kind of delineate those 3 types of carry. I'll be honest, a lot of the time I'm just covered carry, because it's just fine where I live and work and everything. I'm not as concerned. I mean, not at work, but the things that I do, I'm just fine. But I did want to say this, Chuck. When we went outside to do some of the OC stuff, you just had a T-shirt on, and then you download your Glock 19. And I thought, I did not notice that Chuck was carrying a Glock 19 under just that T-shirt. So, even someone that knows it, again, that was some good covered carry right there. So it can work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so back to the sourcing weapons on site wherever you get there. One of the fun things that you brought up, and it reminded me of me being on cruises. You said that bring some duct tape with you, find a piece of cardboard or a notebook or something, like a legal pad. Cut up that legal.
We going to do video or just audio on this one?
We're doing video, but are you wanting to show something?
So, yeah, as simple as,
yep.
Take your big chief tablet, and what we're talking about is something as innocuous as that, and you got some good duct tape, and then you can easily make a knife sheath with those materials.
And then go grab a steak knife out of the restaurant.
Borrow a good steak knife out of the restaurant, which I have. So I've been a lot of places, done a lot of things, but I've never actually been on like one of those Carnival cruises or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But all of my friends that have been on those tell me, oh yeah, they got they're really sturdy steak knives. So they check you getting on the boat. They don't check you getting off the boat.
Yeah.
Nice.
So in other words, you could, are you, because see, I've been on a handful of cruises and I don't recall, it seems like you're saying when you get off, you could maybe grab one source knife, and then when you get back on, ditch that or something, so and then make another one.
So I got a friend that does, we'll call it national intelligence work. And before he can take a vacation, he has to, like a family vacation, which he wants to, most people want to have a good family life, things like that. His family's always done a cruise thing. So they'll do cruises. Well, he at his level has to send in, his bosses have to look at his itinerary. So the cruise ship goes around and maybe you have the different ports of call, right? So they'll tell him you can get off the boat here and here, but not there. So even when he's getting off the boat anywhere, it is a worry since he's outside of the country. So he doesn't have like his concealed carry that he would have in CONUS, and he's not armed like he would have on assignment overseas. So, if you were going to put a bag on his head and drag him into a van and put, flex cuffs on him and stuff, one of those places would be where you might want to do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So with his training and experience, when he thinks about that, what he'll do is make himself, get a nice steak knife from the cruise ship, make himself a duct tape and cardboard holster. He can carry the knife off of the ship, go through the metal detector to get back onto the ship after he has gifted the knife to somebody before getting back on the boat. So, it is a workable solution. I'm pretty sure the cruise ship companies aren't going to approve of that. But it is what it is.
Yep. You got to take care of yourself and take care of your family. Yeah.
It's certainly going to be on my repertoire when I go. I think I might go on a cruise, maybe not next year, but I mean, of course, they're so damn expensive these days. But my oldest, he's going to graduate next year. We're going to go on a pretty big vacation, so it might be another cruise. But and then, like you gave an example of grabbing a padlock, putting that in a sock for a sap too.
So a padlock and a bandana was a street weapon, very common with gangsters in the 1980s, because a padlock and a bandana separately are totally legal. Can you walk around with a padlock in your pocket? Yeah. So if I loop the bandana through the loop of the lock of the padlock, can I use that as a ersatz impact weapon? Swing that thing. Yeah, it becomes what is legally known as a slung shot, or a sap blackjack type of weapon. So that's another one. If you look at the rules of where you're going, like when I went to Belize, I looked up. You could have a folding knife 3 inches or less. So I ended up with one of the Spyderco salts because I was going to, and I got the bright yellow handle because what is that? It's a dive knife, right? Then when I got down there, I figured out that like every other dude in Belize was walking around with a machete. So a tip that I took from a buddy of mine that did a lot of overseas work is whenever he got into a country, most cultures have some sort of knife that's their thing. Like if you go to the Philippines, it might be a bolo, or you guys get the idea, right? So whenever he went to a different country, there would be somebody that he could get a knife from that's like their national knife or something like that. So then he might be carrying his souvenir knife around with him until he leaves to take it home. So that's his cover story. I've noticed when people are going to tropical places, I don't know that I don't have it here, but around here someplace, like my wife was going on a vacation with one of her friends to Costa Rica, and I did the tip of, she took a dive knife with her. So it's a lime green, looks like a dive knife, is a dive knife, doesn't have that like tactical death beard Spartan helmet look to it, right? And coming through their customs, they didn't even look twice at it. They're like, oh, some white chicks are going on vacation in a place where there's diving, and they took some gear with them. They didn't even think twice of it.
Nice.
Awesome.
This is all good tips, and it kind of reminds me of Greg Ellifritz, his book Choose Adventure, he goes through a lot of these examples and some very similar information.
Yeah.
But you got a excellent take on it, Chuck, and I'm sure our audience is definitely appreciating it.
Well, and here's the type of pencil that I was actually taking notes with in that class. It's a Staedtler. It's a Japanese aluminum drafting pencil, excuse me. And it you guys talked about, normal pens, not grabbing one of those big, tactical looking pen. Almost anyone's going to know what that is. But I can put this on, and I've got a notepad. I'm writing notes with my pencil, right? But this could work in a pinch too, because it's pretty sturdy. But that was another example you guys gave was, I think, didn't you guys even bring up getting inexpensive fountain pens? That was another thing that you suggested.
Yeah, Cecil used to do a lot of, when in his corporate life, used to do a lot of like signing contracts and things like that. And he got into fountain pens because, it looks fancy, the writing, if you master that, your signature looks really nice, that sort of thing. So, and fountain pens have nibs, and nibs are, quite frankly, rather sharp.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I literally forgot about the fountain pen until I was talking about this. Let's see here.
The other huge part of that class, the drills that Darryl and I developed, and then the muck that Cecil and I teach, is what we want people to do is think of reasonable force options. Verbal commands, verbal de-escalation, correct use of force at the correct time, and then if you have to, thinking with a gun in your hand. As you recall in our live fire scenarios, not to let too much of the cat out of the bag, but you could screw that up, and then we'll be telling you good luck at your murder trial, because we use their setup to, like most range drills. Rule 4 is just kind of a gimme. You got a target, and there's a berm, and rule 4 takes care of itself. But that's not reality. That's if you're getting jacked on a Walmart parking lot on a Friday afternoon, then what's the odds that you're going to have a completely uncluttered and safe Rule 4 problem? Nobody downrange or nobody in between you and the bad guy or what have you. So in the real world, we want to make people think of how do you not endanger the other people that are around you if they're around for your problem. So as you well recall, that was a huge part of some of the drills that we did, was thinking with a gun in your hand as opposed to just technical shooting. You want to have good technical shooting skills so that becomes something that you can do with automaticity. That way you can use your brain to think about what you're doing and how you're doing it in the scenario, as opposed to, oh man, I have to, grip my pistol and then, do this and do that to work the gun at a conscious level as opposed to a subconscious level. And then part of what we do is, as you may recall, give people options. That phrase that I coined, something between a harsh word and a gun. We got a little bit of empty hand skills. We got a little bit of intermediate weapons with the OC. And one of the things that I have found, Darryl and I both agree with, because we've both been there, is if you have a competent display of force or a competent use of force at a low level, you often don't have to use more force later to dig yourself out of a hole. You can see in some of the police action videos that we've seen where guys got themselves into a shooting that really maybe didn't need to happen. And then one of the cases I talk about famously is the George Zimmerman case. If George Zimmerman had the muck class and then had intermediate, like let's say OC, if he had used verbal de-escalation and perhaps he had to deploy OC and sprayed Trayvon Martin instead of letting it devolve into a shooting, would we have ever heard of George Zimmerman or Trayvon Martin, because the incident wouldn't have hit the news. So we want people to be thinking tacticians, have verbal agility, have something between a harsh word and a gun, and then if it goes to guns, how to utilize that effectively. That's all of that's part and parcel to that class.
Well, and when it comes to the shooting, I did want to say this. Me being a decent shooter, I actually, when I was shooting those drills, I went fairly dang slow, and the way I've explained it to people how. So there, and the what did he in the indoor ready position is really, really cool. But basically, you would just I felt like it was kind of like you were having to surgically insert yourself into a shot, come back to indoor ready, surgically insert yourself into another shot or two. And it took a while to make those decisions and see the angles you were shooting. And I'll tell you, about, I think it was literally the following weekend, I taught a class, our pistol, defensive pistol level 1 class. And I didn't take the rule 4. I didn't say it like you guys did, because you guys went really in depth. But what I did do for my demonstration, and I took a bit of it away from this class, was when I was explaining rule 4, I grabbed my blue gun and I had my assistant go stand behind another guy and explain the fact that, okay, that I really need to know what is behind my target and not just what my target is. And I showed them how I needed to lean in to take the shot at that guy, so I wasn't possibly shooting through him and getting the guy behind him.
Yeah.
But I think it was definitely influenced by what you guys taught there. It was kind of like amalgamating your guys' explanation and focusing on rule 4, but then kind of melding that with how we did the shooting drills. And I believe that it was pretty vivid to the students. So I appreciate you guys. I'm pretty sure I might have even said, hey, I'm going to take something away from a class I took a couple weeks ago. But yeah, that class was excellent. And just so we can insert this in here, are you guys teaching that anytime soon, Chuck? Do you know?
So weirdly enough, we first did that one in Wisconsin. So my buddy Robin had set us up for that class, and up near Holman, Wisconsin. And we did this, and we talked about it. We set up, hey, this is going to be really cool. We'll do this thing. And we figured going to be a one-off class, right? And then some other people heard about it. Hey, can we do that? Hey, can we do that? So we've had, I think, 5 sessions of that class now that we've done. And it's turned into kind of an on-demand thing. We don't have one currently scheduled, but Cecil, I text messaged with Cecil and Darryl just a couple of days ago. Cecil's got a guy up in Montana that wants to host it, and we got a couple other bites. So, the last time we did it was Texas, and then a couple of months before that, we were near Escondido, California.
Mm-hmm.
We have been, the last one was Dallas, just south of Dallas, but we've been Escondido.
Yeah, that's the one I went to. Mm-hmm.
We've been to Wisconsin twice. We've been to the excellent Mead Hall Range outside of Shawnee, Oklahoma.
Yep.
A couple other places. So it's cool that instead of being a one-off thing, people have an interest in that, I believe, because I'm not a big competition versus street, and that some people talk a bunch of crap about, competition's going to get killed in the street and things, just words to that effect. But that is, as you well know, is very street oriented versus if you do some of the things you want to do on the street will slow you down and cost you points of competition.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a fact. So it's does my heart good to see people interested in that class.
Well, and Chuck, what I will say, and man, I am very disappointed that I wasn't able to make it there for that class. You know, it's just Aaron and I, there's many times where we can't make it to the same class. We try, but of course, I met you at TACCon. You know, it was excellent to meet and speak with you there. But what I was going to say on the lines that you were just talking about, and, you know, it's hard, you know, I want to look at it from a lens outside of the circles that we're in, because anybody in the range master circle or within the path that we're all in, there's a lot of there's a lot of relationships. And, you know, a good example is I had just attended the inaugural combative summit down in Florida. Unbelievable event. It felt like it felt like the TACCon of combatives. It was awesome.
Yeah,
But
I really wanted to make that one, and I was already booked for something else that weekend.
well, hopefully we can see you there this next year, because it's already being planned. But I think I'm trying to combine those two events, like with TACCon, your guys' training. What I am seeing is there is a steady movement towards more people wanting to be in the coursework and training venues that are most important. And yeah, maybe it's only a small percentage, but like you were mentioning, Chuck, I am seeing a lot more people want classes like your guys' course. So yeah, I just wanted to make that point. I mean, I love seeing, you know, even you know, what is it, 10 to 10,000 or so, maybe a little more, seem to be the average numbers that Tom has talked about that really train. And I've always said, man, what would happen if we could simply double that? You know, so that would be profound in and of itself. But I think we're going to start to see that. I really do. Your thoughts on that?
It's you know, and the interdisciplinary thing is actually relatively new, especially for more mass consumption. A lot of people look at like Craig Douglas. You know, he talks about how successful his ECQC, let's say, is, and people are like, "Oh man," he's like, "Yeah, he was 20 years of grind to become an overnight success." You know,
Yep.
but it does my heart good. So I'm friends with guys like Craig, Paul Sharp. You know, he's a
Yeah.
master of the interdisciplinary stuff.
Yeah.
The entire ShivWorks crew, ShivWorks collective, Cecil is part of that as well. And there's other people involved in that. And then, you know, myself, like on the periphery of that, I've got a wrestling background, jiu-jitsu background. I joke about being mixed martial arts because I ran around like an ADD kid doing Muay Thai and, you know, Eskrima and things like that, because you know I was looking for the big secret, and that is what we have known since the popularization of things like UFC. Look at the body of work that Craig's done with ECQC and you know, like Paul Sharp's work and things like that. That being able to strike, being able to do some sort of grappling, and then integrating your weapons into that reality is pretty much where the answer is.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent thought on that. Well, Aaron, what you got else, man?
Well, I just had one kind of fun question because, you know, Chuck, I know that you favor it was you were either carrying your 19 or your 45. I can't remember, but I know that's probably your primary when you're out. But if you're trying to go streamlined, um, kind of like in this class NPE, if you're really trying to keep it low profile, what do you like to carry?
So I've got a number of guns that I can start shrinking. I'm become very fond of my little Glock 43X. I've got a Glock 43, got that Glock 42 we talked about, and I have a fascination with small guns. I have in my life carried things like a baby Browning, because before we had some of the micro guns we have now, our choices were kind of limited, and then what you could get was something very small caliber like 25s, 32s, things like that. But I have been a strong proponent of the snub nose 38 revolver for a very long time, kind of like the package of a Glock 19. You got 16 rounds in a package that it's big enough to be used as a service pistol and to endure like abuse and mud and things like that, small enough to conceal on your person and really conceal well, controllability, easy to repair, easy to run, things like that. There's a reason why Glock 19s are so popular, even amongst like you know special operators. Yeah, like the Glock 19s have been in the SOCOM system for a very long time. And then also, if you look at truly NPEs, most people don't know that CIA operators overseas, and a number of other, what my dad used to call spooks in Vietnam, the people that are doing truly undercover stuff. If you read Ed Lovett's book, the Snubby book, uh, Ed Lovett's background is what? He's an over 30-year CIA guy. So what happens to you in a foreign country if you get caught rolling dirty? That's pretty significant. You might end up in the basement and, it's going to look like something out of a horror movie. Water dripping out of the ceiling. You got maybe a light bulb in the corner. Nobody knows where you're at, that type of thing. So anyway, 38 snub nose revolvers, some sort of J frame, because like Ruger LCRs and things didn't exist back then, but some sort of J frame revolver was what those guys carried, truly covert carry. And what does that give you? A very concealable handgun of enough power to deck a grown man that you can hit. I still carry a 5-shot snub as a backup gun when I'm in uniform as a cop. And every day I've been in uniform since the 80s, I have had a backup gun on me. So I have gone back. I've dabbled with other things, but keep going back to snub nose 38s. Powerful enough to deck a large man. I can hit with it reliably 25 yards and past. Super reliable, not ammo dependent. Any ammo that fits in the chamber is going to run the gun. Even if you got less than optimal ammo, that it's still gonna run the gun. And in a close quarter environment, you don't have to worry about clothing interference, having a stovepipe. You can't limp wrist a revolver the way you can a semi-auto, things like that. So not only Ed Lovett, but other guys that I know that have done undercover work overseas, where they may have to worry about, the proverbial panel van with guys in ski masks pulling up and dragging you into the van, and they're trying to get the flex cuffs on and things like that. So imagine fighting 3 or 4 dudes in the back of a van. What kind of gun do you want to count on that's going to work? And snub revolvers, what a lot of professionals have done for a very long time. And then, like I say, the package of concealability, shootability, power on target, and then reliability in worst case scenario situations really pays off. To illustrate that, you can pull up the incident on the internet. Good buddy of mine, Nick, is a copper in Metro Indianapolis. He just had a gun grab where his holster broke, and bad guy torched off a round. He caught about half. My buddy caught about half an HST in the leg, and defaulted to his backup gun. Put 4 rounds of a 38 gold dot into the bad guy. Saved his own life. Bad guy is no longer with us, and the good guy is. And that was in a grapple on the ground, flat on his back. having to shoot at an upward angle at a dude that was much bigger and much stronger than him.
Wow,
So
Chuck. So this was just recently. I'm surprised that I hadn't heard of that.
yeah,
Um,
that's the Indy Metro PD did one of those. You know how they'll do like the briefing, like LAPD's taking a doing that, and other, like I just saw one out of Scottsdale. They're like, okay, this is what we had happen, and this is the body cam, and this is the circumstances, yada yada yada. Yeah, Indy released Nick's incident. You can look it up on the internet, but
we'll do.
that was a 642 weekend only, and you know, like I say, his holster broke, gun went off. Bad guy was much bigger, on drugs, much stronger than him, and Nick had to save his own life. And thankfully, he had mindset and training and a good snub nose 38 that he fired 4 rounds, got 4 hits. No, in situations like that, what I have noticed out of, because I have an extensive background of uh, among other things, in investigating officer involved incidents, right? And what we see in real life is that semi auto pistols in fights are not as reliable as they are on the range. They're just not. So things like a jacked up grip, having a stovepipe, maybe your gun's a little bit dirty, whatever the case may be, clothing interference, bad guys trying to grab your gun, semi autos choke on us much more commonly on the street than they do on the range.
Very well said, Chuck. And you always bring a lot of wisdom and bring excellent connections to what we really should be considering and what our audience should be considering for self-defense choices.
I did have one more question. Now, if it's your choice, what ammo would you put in that 38?
You beat me, Aaron.
So I have like carpal tunnel and old guy issues and things like that. What I have found is, you can get away with a lot of recoil for a long time. Like I started in the 357 Magnum days, and my Ruger would stand up to full house Magnums. So I fired thousands of rounds of full house 357 Magnum. Probably didn't do me much good in the long run. It's like anything we do, ruck runs or jumping out of airplanes or whatever.
Yep.
You're gonna pay
Get
a
it
price.
to me.
So for airweight guns, I'm a big fan, for the most part, a good wad cutter load. I like the Remington, the Federal, the Winchester. Georgia Arms has a specific defensive wad cutter made. I would tell people to buy it, but Georgia Arms had a unfortunate fire at their factory that they're recovering from. They're hoping to be back making ammo in January, but right now they're kind of in recovery mode. But the Georgia Arms wad cutter, we tested that at Gunsight at Revolver Roundup, myself and Mark Fricky, and that Georgia Arms load is pretty legit. The truth of small handguns, and this is something that I talk about. I have a specialty small guns class: pocket rockets, small semi-autos, and snub revolvers. One of the things I point out is if you start sawing the barrel off, it's like a runway on an aircraft. If you get the runway too short, what happens? You don't achieve enough speed. So there's, in small nines, 380s, whatever your caliber, if you get the barrel too short, some of your ammo choices are not going to work. Your jacket at hollow points are very velocity dependent. So the dirty little secret of snub revolvers is that jacket at hollow points tend not to mushroom. And then, like in other guns like 380s and several other calibers I can point to, if they do mushroom, then they tend to stop short, like they don't penetrate enough. So ammo selection, like a wad cutter, a lot of people think it's, I'm sort of Luddite that why would I not want a jacket at hollow point, where a wad cutter does wad cutter stuff, and a jacket at hollow point that doesn't open up actually does less tissue damage. Mm-hmm. So wad cutters are one of my go-tos for really airweight revolvers. Now, if I'm carrying like a steel frame gun, 640, the 357 Magnum LCR, a K-frame, Smith & Wesson K-frame, something like that, that 135 grain plus P gold dot is superb. the 158 grain lead semi-wad cutter hollow point that Remington makes, particularly the new version, because we just tested that at Revolver Roundup in November. The Remington, after the bankruptcy and then reopening, their ammo is legit. For a while there, before the bankruptcy, and the company that owned them, the umbrella company that owned them, quality control wasn't where it should be. But now the people from Federal opened up the Remington factory again, and the quality control is a focus, and the new Remington ammo is very, very good. And that classic lead semi-wad cutter hollow point, the FBI load, or depending on where you're from, Chicago load, St. Louis load, is pretty legit, as Remington puts it out. But quite frankly, there's a lot of dudes out there like Pat Rogers. I was helping him with a pistol class up in Iowa. We were talking about ammo and guns and things like that. And one of the young guys talked about how NYPD, the 38 sucks and things like that. And Pat never had hollow points in his career. He went from round nose to lead semi-wad cutter. And then in the 9mm, they had full metal jacket, which is just silly, but it's New York. But he talked about that 38, the 38 lead load that they carried. He said, you know what? It worked pretty good if you could shoot. And the secret of handguns is none of it really works that good if you can't shoot.
Yep.
Yeah. I know people poo-poo it, but an authority such as Charles Askins, if you read his book, No Second Place Winner, he called the 38 service load, the classic 158 grain load of back in the day. He called it a, quote, hairy-chested man killer. And Charles Askins had been involved in enough incidents, he would have a point of reference.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, excellent.
Well, it is interesting, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on the the trite caliber debates, but what you're giving out there is a little deeper, because the novices only talk about 9mm versus 45. You're really a novice if that's all they talk about. They're really a novice, right? And it just gets old. We roll our eyes, but then and then you have someone like Darryl Bolke that recommends carrying a 22 if that's all that you can carry with Federal punch. But and then like you carry and like I carry the Glock 42 and 380. Now, what 380 do you like? I didn't mean to go off on this, but just while we're on the topic.
So my most recent test was at Federal Hydroshock Deep. That's a pretty good load. But I'm not opposed to 380 with full metal jacket. If that's so when I do ammunition selection, and this is whatever caliber it is, does it go bang? Does it reliably function, feed in my gun, whatever, if I got a revolver, semi-auto, whatever the case may be, does it function and feed in my gun? It's got to go bang or to do you any good. Next, does it accurately hit to my sights? That's what I'm worried about next. Does the bullet penetrate enough to get the job done? Because there's a lot of bullets. There's a lot of like the RIP bullets and the Liberty Halo bullets, and there's a lot of garbage, super uber velocity, lightweight bullets, Glazer safety slugs. They're just garbage. They do not penetrate enough to get the job done reliably, right? So once I've solved those criteria, I start worrying about the nuances of bullet expansion, things like that. Now, if you get into service pistols, and by that I mean 9, 40, 45, 357 SIG, etc., serviced, like something a cop or a military guy would wear in a holster. All of those have enough horsepower to make jagged and hollow points work very reliably if they're well designed. And we know from the FBI Miami incident, you can have jagged and hollow points that are poorly designed, you get poor performance. So things like gold dots and HST, critical duty, Hornady critical duty are absolutely superb ammunition. One of the things I don't get wrapped around the axle about is, and I am a fan of good expanding ammo with the service pistol calibers, because in a defensive scenario, CONUS, We already talked about the Rule 4 issues. A 9mm, like a NATO ball, or a 40 caliber full metal jacket flat point will shoot through like 3 people in a row. So if I clip my dude that's a bad guy and my bullet ends up 200 yards down range and hits a kid or something, whose fault is that? That's mine. So what jacket hollow points and those calibers really do is a parachute effect. It's like a parachute on a dragster. What does that do? It keeps the dragster from going through the fence and the hay bales and off into the cornfield, right? So, but in smaller calibers, 380s, 32s, like that 22 punch you mentioned, what is that designed to do? Not expand, so that it gets optimal levels of penetration for a small caliber. But as far as like just general mindset, one of the rhetorical questions I ask people is, how many of the combatants killed by small arms fire in World War II were hit with a jacket at hollow point?
I don't think any, right?
Unless Charles Adkins snuck something to Europe, and he's the kind of guy that might do it, the answer is going to be absolute zero, right? One of the things I never got hung up about is, the idea of people that tell you, well, if you don't have this, if you're carrying that, you're going to get killed in the streets. And I think that's a mindset failure.
Oh, yeah.
There was a point in my life where I was wearing a green uniform, and if World War II popped off on the classic Russians coming through the Fulda Gap in Germany, I was going to be fighting Russians with an M16A1 loaded with 55 grain ball and a 1911 loaded with 230 grain ball. That's the way it was, right? Before me, my dad was in that scenario. When he was an air crewman, his survival gun, his bail out of the helicopter gun, was what? A 38 revolver with a 130 grain full metal jacket. Am I going to give up? Am I going to go into a fetal? Oh no, I've got 55 grain ball in my M16. I better surrender. No, I'm gonna do what I got to do. I would rather, maybe I'd rather have this gun or that gun. But quite frankly, if you if you told me I had to do the job, if I had to go back in time and do the job that I had to do for most of my adult life, if you gave me a 38 revolver, a 357 revolver, which I did carry, a 9, a 40, a 45, whatever, I'm gonna do what I got to do. The equipment is ancillary. What did Steinbeck tell us? The final weapon is the brain, right?
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. There are cases where, at some point you just got to use what you got and, shoot well, be well trained, well prepared, and you're likely going to do just fine. People do get bent around the axle about caliber choices and all that. And, as Aaron was alluding to, it's sophomoric, but frankly, you're given a lot of great guidance, Chuck, with your experience.
Well, you look at feats of arms. If people have never heard of the dude, and it's sad, we forget our history. You guys familiar with Sergeant Alvin York?
Oh yeah.
So what he pulled off, what Colonel Cooper would call a feat of arms. He was shooting a lot of Germans with his rifle in the World War I trenches. And so much so, a squad decided to commit a bayonet charge against him, thinking this dude with a bolt action rifle was going to get 1 or 2 of us, but then we're going to take him out because he's such a pain in our ass. And what does Alvin York do? He has 7 bad guys running at him with bayonets. He's got a 7-shot 1911. He dumps all of them before they can get to him. Why did he worry about, oh my God, I've got ball ammo or whatever? And the truth of the fact is, according to all the research that I've done, if you look at the movie, Gary Cooper was carrying a Luger when they did the reenactment of that feat. And a lot of people are like, well, you can't do that with a Luger. He actually had a 1911. And the thing is, Alvin York was a technical advisor on the movie about himself. And memory is a funny thing in the battle. Sergeant York he didn't really remember which pistol he picked up. Could have been a Luger, could have, whatever. But, do we have guys like Jim Cirillo, did they do a lot of good work with a Model 10 revolver?
Mm-hmm.
They did, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent. Well, now that is kind of a good segue into some law enforcement topics here. So we've talked to you a bit about this before, Chuck, but it's nice to kind of round this out again to see what you're still observing, if things have changed, things have gotten better. But what I am, of course, referring to is the increased politicized control over police officers and law enforcement, how it has affected both law enforcement retention, recruitment, and then we also have mentioned between us talking about some training issues. But can you let us know, kind of give us an update on especially the current state of retention and then on into recruitment, how that's going and what you're seeing?
So, something I saw for my career starting out was when I started out, guys that get involved, it was a career. You're going to do 20 or 30, get your retirement and go. Combination of a couple of things like how retirement systems work, and this varies state to state and maybe even city to city, depending on. So this is kind of a rule of thumb versus absolute statement of hard numbers, right? But then the other thing I saw was with LEOSA, the HR 218, Law Enforcement Officer Safety Act. So that allows officers to carry in all 50 states and the U.S. territories under the Law Enforcement Officer Safety Act, as long as you are full-time or bona fide retired. And then you do your qualification at least once a year, got your retired credentials. So for the retired guys. When it became like at my old job, guys were vested in the system back then at 15 years. So you would get some retirement, not a full retirement, right? But you were vested. And that's about the same time the LEOSA was a 15-year standard for a retired officer. We had guys starting to pull the pin at 15. I'm done. I'm just leaving. So people weren't doing their 20. They weren't doing their 30. And it's gotten worse. Our retirement system now is you're vested at 10. So we got guys doing, if they're in, they hit that burnout stage, something that Dr. Gil Martin talks about in the book, Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement. Guys in about the 9, 10, 11-year mark really have to, that's where you see the problems like attitude, getting burnout, starting to have, if you fall into the pitfall of alcohol problems, things like that, that's where it really starts to hit hard, because humans are cyclical and their level of enthusiasm and things like that waxes and wanes. So started seeing guys bail out at 10. When I went to take the test for my department back in the 80s, when I signed up, we showed up for the written test and they hosted it at a local university. And it was one of those big auditorium lecture classroom halls. There was 800 people in that room to take the written test. And I thought, oh my God, I'm, 21 years old, no police experience, that sort of thing. I got some military time, that sort of thing. I'm never going to get hired. Well, they cut that down to 20 people for the hiring class that I was involved in. So I got hired. So 800 people took the test for 20 positions, right? That's the level of people we're trying to get on the job. It was even worse for the fire department guys because everybody, nobody likes cops. Everybody loves firefighters. So a lot more people would sign up. They might have 1,000 people sign up for the fire test. We don't see that anymore. And not only we don't see it in the police world, we don't see it in emergency services in general. Now, just random numbers. Let's say my old job needed to hire 15 people for the next recruit class. Instead of 200 or 300, 800 people signing up, they might get 40 or 50. The fire department is seeing the same thing, that they're having, serious recruitment issues. Then they got retention issues, keeping people. Maybe they're there for a couple of years and they get disenchanted with how broke the system is. And then they're like, yeah, I'm going to go do something else. Most jurisdictions are suffering this issue. Now, part of this is your local politics and your local politicians. So a lot of people bitch about the cops that they have. And I will tell you, wherever you are at, whatever jurisdiction you are in, you get the cops that you vote for. So people will tell me, well, I didn't vote for whatever, the chief of police, right? That's not how that works. So, like in my city, you have a mayor and a city council. Who sets the budget for the police department? Who hires the police chief? Who sets the tone of what they would like to see those cops do? That's the mayor and the city council. So if there's a particular crime, I can tell you from firsthand experience, if there's a particular crime problem in your jurisdiction and your elected official, let's say you have a mayor, like a mayoral system or city manager, cities vary. If that dude calls up the chief of police and says, I want you to handle this, what do you think's going to happen?
Probably going to handle it.
Yeah, it's the chief police is going to make sure that becomes a priority. So we see the opposite in some of the stuff we say I'll pick on Los Angeles because, they've had those like malls that get looted and, shoplifting has basically been legalized because they won't respond to it and they won't prosecute for it. Well, your DA is an elected official. Your mayor and city council are elected. So they basically told the cops, we don't want you arresting shoplifters anymore. And if you do, we're not going to prosecute them. So what's going on with shoplifting? Through the roof, right?
Skyrocketing.
Car break-ins. I heard of people in San Francisco that they leave, not only do they leave their doors unlocked, but they'll park their car with their windows down because the bums will walk up and knock out your window without even trying the door to see if it's locked or not. So they'll leave their windows down and their doors unlocked with nothing in the car. Just let the bums rifle through the car because that way maybe you can get away without your windows being broke. That's what some of our cities have devolved to. Who's the responsible? And a lot of people are like, oh, it's the cops and the crime. So the cops aren't doing their job. The cops are going to do whatever job their mayor and city council tells them to do. That's a fact of life. Another thing I see in the gun world is all the time, like at my old job when I was running a range master program, when I was range master for about 3 years, more than most cops in my state, because there's cops in my state that might shoot a 50-round qual once a year. And, all of us are more adept shooters at that. I know IDPA, USPSA, that, the guys that shoot thousands of rounds a year. Maybe you go to a gun class, maybe it's 1,000 rounds in a weekend, right? So my cops were shooting about 400 rounds per cop, 2 8-hour days a year. That's what they gave me. So I try to have maximum bang for my buck. But 800 rounds a year, I know a lot of shooters that wouldn't think that was a robust training program, would you?
Not typically, no.
So who sets the priority for that? The department does, but who sets the priorities for the department? The elected officials do. So if you think your cops are poorly trained and they suck, who is ultimately responsible for that happening? The voters.
Yep.
I talk to people, I talk to people all the time, cops can't shoot and blah, 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 and this and that. And I'm like, okay. So if you believe that to be the case, and let's say it is, let's say face value that it is, your cops are poorly trained and they can't shoot well and they should do better. I will ask the person making these statements, I go, have you contacted your elected representatives, whatever they are in your jurisdiction, city council, city manager, mayor, whatever you got, county commission? And have you emphasized that as a voter, you want this to be a priority? And I get stares and I can hear crickets. People want to bitch about stuff on the internet or shit talk each other, but people don't want to take effective action, which quite frankly makes you a poor American citizen.
Well, and it doesn't take much to call them. Just to even call them, it takes just moments.
How many people are in your IDPA club or USPSA club?
Boy, about any given weekend, 30, 40 people. Do you mean just like locally? I'm trying to make sure I'm answering your question.
Yeah. So just like my IDPA club is inside my county, right?
Yeah.
So most of the dudes that show up, there's people that show up outside, but most of the dudes that show, we might have 100 people show up for one of the bigger matches, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and a lot of them are going to live in my county.
Yeah.
What do you think would happen if all 30, 40, 50, 100 people in your club hit up, if there was a wave of people that were voters that said, we want this to be a priority and you're not taking care of it as an elected official? Do you think that guy might be worried about, or gal might be worried about reelection next time?
Oh, absolutely. Just that small amount
Mhm.
would do
Yeah.
wonders.
Yep. But does that commonly happen?
Nope.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, and I mean, we can all be better. I make it. I would say that I absolutely have been calling my local politicians more than I ever did, but I can get better at it. I spend a lot of time at the national level for certain, but it is just something that is not common anymore. And man, if we just start preaching that, and we're going to take your lead, we're going to start preaching that more on this show. Absolutely.
Excellent.
A lot of your local election, you look at like the disaster, like we were talking about LA. Everybody was worried about Trump versus Biden, right? So on a day-to-day basis, how much does Trump or Biden affect your life? Versus if you're a shop owner in Los Angeles and you have a district attorney that's on record that he won't prosecute things, does that have an immediate and daily impact on your life?
Absolutely. Way more impact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but local politics, it is, and I mean, I would say that, it was 20 years ago when I started figuring that out, and I'm like, man, this is, because I'm going to tell on myself. Back then, 20 years ago, I didn't pay real close attention on a local level. Now when elections coming up, I'm doing every bit of the research that I can to make sure I know who I'm voting for and getting to know those individuals, because it is huge. And by the way, let's look at it this way. That drives also national politics too, from the bottom up. That what happens at the local level, if you can change what's going on at the local level, you can absolutely change a lot of people's minds on who in the hell they're voting for at the national level.
The other thing about the local versus why is Soros putting so much money into DA's runs on DA offices? It's because it has that local effect. So
Absolutely.
the other thing is a defensive gun carrier. Do you think about the jurisdiction? Where am I going to go? And I'm carrying. Let's say I get into a defensive shooting. Are you worried about what jurisdiction you're in when that happens, and then the ramifications of what happens next? So if somebody's going to file charges to put you in prison, is that going to be a senator or a president, or is that going to be a district attorney? That's going to
DA.
be your county attorney.
And I think that is the point too, Chuck, is, George Soros, and now his son is starting to take over, because, George Soros looks like he's about to die, frankly. That's probably rude of me, but I don't care. That his son is taking over what he's doing. And, just because George Soros is about to be out of the game, his son is right there behind him. And even though those local DAs, have are the focus, it is all around the United States. And I know there's multivariate reasons for why the violent crime and murder are starting to skyrocket, depending on what the statistic you look at. I mean, it's upwards in the 40s, 40 percentile now, and it's all contributory to that type of political movement, right?
Well, if you look at what's driving it, do you think if a bad guy does something and they get away with it, that they think they can get away with it again?
Absolutely.
So you get some of these large cities like Chicago, their murder clearance rate is down like 20%. So if you think about that, if you're a gang member, 4 out of the 5 dudes that you know that did a murder, no, they've never been arrested for. Do you think that's going to make you bolder? Make you think you can get away with shit? Make you think the old rules don't matter?
Most
Absolutely.
assuredly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what's unfortunate is I think we got some pretty hard times coming, because it's going to take, it's like stopping a train, or trying to turn a ship around. It's
Yep.
extremely hard. There is massive momentum with these policies, with these DAs, and with the mindset of people, the mindset of the criminal actor, that we haven't seen the worst of it. I'm not trying to at all be pessimistic. I'm just trying to be a realist. Is that this has set in motion some serious societal ramifications that folks got to wake up, and they've got to start somehow getting these DAs thrown out of office, start demanding of all of the local, state, national politicians demand, and unfortunately it's going to take a long time.
Well, and when it comes to who you vote for, so in my city, I'm just going to lay this crap out. So I live in Tulsa County, but I live in a city called Jinx. Now, I am under Tulsa County, and most everything affects me from Tulsa, but I can't vote for the freaking mayor. And so what happens here, this is one of the most, Chuck, Oklahoma pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty dang conservative place. One of the most conservative states there is. Very, very, very favorable to gun owners. And, you shouldn't have too many issues with DAs coming after you if you're involved in a self-defense shooting. But I can tell you this, it's real hard to get elected as a Democrat in the city of Tulsa. So what Mr. G.T. Bynum did was ran as a Republican. He got in there and he's ran that city hall just like a leftist. When all the COVID stuff came about, he was gleefully locking everything down he could. And I mean, you could tell his little, he enjoyed doing his weekly or every few day briefings. Okay. And this was on national news the other day. He decided he was going to make Tulsa, Oklahoma a sanctuary city for illegal immigrants. Yeah. So I would gleefully vote against that dude, but I can't. What a piece of crap that runs as a Republican because he knows he can't get elected as a Democrat. Now, that's not unheard of, but he did it, and he was a leftist with an R by his name. That's the way he's ran things. Well, I'll tell you what, I was playing at a basketball game the other day because I play guitar for a college pep band, and that punk walked right in front of me, man. I was like, oh, gosh. Keep your composure here, Aaron. But I'm just I'm saying it is hard. There's that cycle of, okay, you think you're voting someone in that's going to do good, and then they turn around and literally pig and a poke you.
Well, even in the position you're in, I'm sure there's some sort of pack. Next time he's up for election, that somebody's going to run against him, and that person is going to need election funds or re-election funds or some sort of political action committee or something like that.
Man, that's a get involved that way. That's a great suggestion.
If you look at some of these critical, like the last national, they focused on these swing states, Georgia being one of them. A whole lot of the money for the people that the people with an agenda were trying to get elected. A whole lot of the money was coming from out of state.
Oh yeah.
Well, if other people can do it, you can do it too. And maybe you don't want to do out of state. Maybe you want to worry about what's happening in your county, but there's going to be some mechanism for you to help or hinder the people you think should be elected or not elected.
I sure would love a voice against that piece of junk. I mean, man, I can't stand the sight of him. Okay, that's enough, bro. So, Eric, I'm going to hand it off to you for some fun topics. We're getting here pretty close to a good long show.
Yep. So just changing, we have talked a little gear, but Aaron and I have been back in a kick of long gun stuff again, and we just wanted to ask you, what's your long gun of choice?
So, shot a lot of guns for a lot of my life, and I'm living in Kansas, Plain States, things like that. So my choices might change according to geography, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I went up to Alaska, might change. But right now, my general purpose rifle is a 16-inch AR with a variable optic, right? I know we love the acronyms, so we get the, what is it?
LPVO.
Yeah. We when I started out deer hunting, if you had a scope on your rifle, the popular thing was a 3 to 9 power, and we just called those scopes.
Yeah.
So you had a scope or a variable scope. And we don't. It's a low power variable optic. Okay. But like one of my guns, I got a 16-inch Colt, and it's got some Steiner 1-4 glass on it. Nothing super fancy. So I have taken 9 deer, probably close to 20 coyotes with that gun. So that has become my woods walking, deer hunting, predator control, general purpose gun. And I have carried it as a patrol rifle in a cop car.
Nice.
So
what ammo are you when you're using it for deer? I'm just curious what ammo you're using.
I'm a big fan for a while now of 62 grain gold dot.
Oh yeah.
So which I'm assuming is the federal bonded 62 grain bullet that Federal has, I think.
Yeah, it's the gold dot line bullet, but it's the exact same bullet as also the Federal Fusion.
Yep, I've got some of those. Yeah.
Started out as a 64 grain. They changed it to 62 grain. It's exactly the same. I've shot it in ballistic gelatin. I've shot it from 10.5-inch guns, 16-inch guns, 20-inch guns. It's a really accurate bullet. We have big deer here in Kansas. I commonly shoot does in doe season for meat that are over 200 pounds.
Those that are over 200, man, that is huge.
Those that are over 200 pounds, common, wow. Right? So big deer where you need some penetrations and bullet performance. And then I've shot, when I was at the airport gig, every once in a while we had to do animal control because you can't have animals on the runway because that makes your jets wreck, right? So we would have to do, the coyotes would get under the fence and run around inside the airport. And I've had to whack coyotes 300 yards away because they don't want to let you get close, and the bullet still performs. So it'll open up on a light body animal at distance. It'll penetrate a large deer at very close range. It does well against auto glass. I've shot up cars with it. I've shot it against soft body armor. I've shot it in ballistic gel from guns as short as 10 and a half. It's just a superb general purpose load.
Nice.
Cool.
Nice. Very cool.
I've got quite a few of those in the safe, and it's in my rifle that has a scope on it.
So, yeah, I'm a big fan of aim points, and I'm a big fan of quality glass. I've got Steiner. I got some Vortex. I've actually got one of my scopes I've been playing around with is a Bushnell. One of the things I really like about the Bushnell is the lens coating they put on it. Something proprietary. They got a name. I'd have to go look it up. But one of the things I noticed, like we get a real winner here as well. You ever accidentally breathed on your scope? Had your breath hit your scope when it's sub freezing, and you get it all, it's all fogged up. And maybe it turns into, if it's cold, it turns into ice.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. That
coating on that Bushnell lens, it'll fog up, and then it'll just kind of fade away. So I'm playing around with that scope. It's a pretty good scope thus far. I can't attest to long-term durability, but there's a lot of people making good 1-4, 1-6, 1-8 variable optics that, I've made very long shots on a 4-power scope. My time, like I'm a school trained sniper through the Army system. I started in a day when things were less sophisticated. My first sniper rifle had a wood stock, and we had to do the Acura glass bedding on and that sort of thing. So what we have now with the plug and play guns and the quality of the optics is superb. The quality of some of the guns that are coming out and the ammo, man, it's plug and play. I don't think people nowadays that get into this realize how good they have it. When we used to have to do sacrifice a chicken and wave it over the gun to get it to shoot straight, and use glass bed the action and hand load the ammo and things like that. But yeah, my general purpose is Colt, Bravo Company, the Liberty Gun Works, or any other quality AR like that. And I'm still a big fan of the 16-inch guns because of how much velocity. You can stretch with the right ammo. You can stretch those guns out to 600 yards.
Yeah.
Without talking combat, not hunting, but you can stretch them out there quite a bit, and they're very useful as a general purpose gun. Predator control, self-defense, police patrol, deer hunting, yada yada yada. So yeah,
that's a fun conversation. Now, in that instance, so Eric, I'm still in your question here, bro.
It, man.
So then the next question, Chuck, is if you have your choice and you need to wake up to some people kicking in the door, what are you grabbing if you have time? Is it still that AR?
It might be an AR, might be a shotgun. So I've seen the aftermath. I've seen a lot of people shot. Seen the aftermath of a lot of people shot. And even though I'm in a pretty good area as far as like RDA and things like that, it's not lost on me that virtually every shotgun event I've seen, like defensive shotgun, double up buck, things like that, has been a 1-round event.
Mm-hmm.
So also, I think truthfully, in my previous life when I was a baby cop, I had my duty pistol, I had my duty revolver, my backup gun, I had an AR-15, and I had a shotgun. So for my house gun, I would grab the shotgun first. And people talk about, well, it doesn't have the capacity and to have this, doesn't have that, but it's probably going to be a 1-round event. And then what's going to happen to that gun? It's going into evidence, and it might be into evidence a while. So is it easier for me to replace a shotgun or a high-end AR? If they're going to take one of my guns away and I have what I have until I can replace that gun, then what else do I have? So It used to be my shotgun was my definite go-to because I got a lot of shotgun time. And when I started in police work, we had revolvers and pump shotguns. So I decided I better get good with what I have because I could bemoan, well, I'd be better off if I had this. Doesn't matter. I don't have it. So, the world is the way that it is. We have to conform to reality. So I got really good with a pump shotgun and really good with a revolver. And I am not uncomfortable with any of the above. And then I ask other people, let's say you do live in Montana or Alaska or whatever, right? What breaks in your door may not be a person.
Yep.
Because bears in some jurisdictions have taken to knocking doors in because they want your groceries or whatever. So, where right now, probably whatever's close. And then quite frankly, if it's the proverbial bump in the night, am I probably going to pick up like right now I've got a Glock 17 with an Acro and a Surefire U-boat, 1,000 lumen pistol light on it. Am I going to pick up my pistol and my mod light and go check out what that noise was? It's probably going to be a handgun is what I grab. If I know the door just crashed in, probably going to be a long gun. But, if it's the proverbial wake up to the bump in the night and you're not sure, man, was that something? Was that not something? I don't know. Is there somebody outside my house? Do I have a prowler or whatever? I'm going to go check it out. That is probably it's going to be a handgun and a handheld light.
Nice. Well, so Chuck, I think we've taken enough of your time, but we got one last question for you.
Sure.
So, have you asked Santa for anything for Christmas, and what might it be?
my list of stuff I would like to have is rather long.
Same here.
Same here.
Like right now, I like lever guns quite a bit, and I've been through a bunch of them in my life, but I don't currently own a lever action rifle. I'm sad to say. And if you've never shot something like a 357 Magnum lever action, I might pick up a Rossi or Taurus. I forget. They're kind of the same company, but the lever guns coming out of Taurus Rossi are very good now. I've shot their new 30-30. The Henrys, very, very nice. I have a hankering to pick up a pistol caliber carbine, like a 9mm AR, and shoot some of the run and gun courses, USPSA or something like that, just because it's fun. Mm-hmm. I like old revolvers, so when I'm in a gun shop or a gun show, I'll keep my eye open for, something like a Model 28 Smith & Wesson is always going to be cool, and that kind of thing. I've been playing around with several other guns. One of the experiments that I've done is budget guns. Like I've owned or shot extensively 7 different Smith & Wesson SD9s. And I think it's a poor man's Glock 19. It's a really good, like, security guard dude has to buy his own gun. It's a really good gun. I tried different revolvers. I have a Smith & Wesson Sport. Back when those were a $490 AR-15. That was my poor man's patrol rifle. I was trying that out. So there's several other guns out there, like the Taurus G and the GX4 series that I've shot. Thus far have been really good guns, so I'm tempted to pick up one of those and really wear it out and see what happens. Because I'm always experimenting with that kind of thing. But I think the next thing I'm going to pick up is either going to be 387 or 30-30 lever gun, just because.
Cool, very cool.
Well, we asked that question just in case your wife, Santa hears this back. So just looking out for you, buddy.
Well, Chuck, those great answers and a lot of fun. We always say this. We like gear. We talk gear sometimes, but we also know the reality of the most important things to talk about are are typically not gear, but we like to every now and then. But so, well, Chuck, thank you for your patience this evening, getting this thing together. I mean, this has been an awesome conversation. We're going to go ahead and try to let you go, but this show is a Christmas show because this will air right at Christmas. So we'll go ahead and say Merry Christmas to you and yours, and let you have a good evening.
Merry Christmas to you guys and anybody listening.
Yep, there will be millions listening to this weekend. So,
good call. Merry Christmas to all our audience out there. We appreciate your guys' support, guys and gals.
Yes, Merry Christmas. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.